I previously talked about the origins of Lucha Libre, covering its very early days and discussing the formation of several prominent Mexican wrestling promotions. And with as much ground as I covered, there's no way that all the wonder that is Lucha Libre could possibly fit into just one episode. And while I've talked about it briefly, one major component of luchador life is definitely in need of a little bit more attention, which is exactly why it's the subject of this episode. Because today, Dave knows masked wrestling. Wearing a mask in professional wrestling is a very old tradition, but it's not purely a Mexican one like some people would have you believe. In fact, the origins of a wrestler wearing a mask is said to have nothing to do with Mexico at all, but rather France instead. Allegedly, it was wrestler Thibaut Bauer that first donned a dome piece covering. In 1865, it was said that Bauer debuted as the mysterious masked wrestler at the World's Fair in Paris, France. Then, in the 1870s, Bauer made his debut in America. Oh, and it's important to note that Bauer was an extremely talented wrestler as well, which could have led to the mask being popular right from the start. Bauer was so good that there was even rumors that specific opponents were brought in to America just to try and defeat him, although these claims are probably a bit exaggerated. And while most wrestling historians do say that Bauer brought the masked wrestler gimmick with him from France and is the originator, there were mutterings that it could have been someone else. Namely, Andre Cristal, who also came from France around the same time. However, there are documented reports from that era that specifically state that Cristal was not the masked wrestler at all. I just thought I'd mention the rumor. Now, speaking of which, an identity crisis is fitting due to another important function of the mask, because also according to many wrestling historians, the alleged original purpose of the mask was so that wrestlers could change gimmicks when they went from different territories. Especially if a wrestler was no longer able to draw, the mask would give him a sort of a second life, if you will. But even if a wrestler was doing well, this at least gave him more potential options by having two separate characters for bookers to choose from, and this also served as a way for bookers themselves to double up their rosters. Now moving on to 1915 and the next major mask milestone, which would hit the New York area. But this time, it was the character of the Masked Marvel, a gimmick that has long since endured, and it all began back when wrestler Mort Henderson first donned the mask. Which brings me to when masked wrestling first hit Mexico. Now, I already covered this in a previous episode, and I don't want to retread old turf. So for a more in-depth look on that particular topic, go ahead and check out that video after this one. And to further expand where I left off on that subject in that particular video, the first masked wrestler in Mexico is credited as Cyclone McKee, who took on the mantle of the Masked Marvel, or El Maravilla Enmascarada in Spanish. Oh, and I should also note that McKee has no confirmed deliberate connection to the Mort Henderson character. Now, in terms of why masks took off in Mexico so well, there are a few ideas out there. One of which claims that the mask designs invoke something deep within Mexican culture, and that the mask represents Mexico's Aztec, Mayan, and or even Incan roots, and that they channel powers of animal spirits and even ancient heroes. And when we see some of these elaborate designs, we can definitely see how they can be correlated. However, this is somewhat suspect. While masks might represent OG Mexico in other aspects of Mexican culture, I doubt this was the original purpose for masks in terms of Lucha Libre, especially when you remember that Cyclone McKee was an American and that his Masked Marvel mask was pretty plain. And after him, other big stars of the mask style such as Blue Demon and El Santo really didn't have anything all that elaborate in their mask design. As far as I'm concerned, this proposed idea is just clever kayfabe meant to add to the mystique and appeal that masks already have. But even though this may not be the original purpose, that doesn't mean that it isn't still the inspiration behind some luchador masks today. Furthermore, even though they may not be ancient heroes, Rey Mysterio has worn masks that were themed after superheroes, such as Spider-Man, Batman, and The Flash. And beyond that, Rey has also had some other interesting design elements in his face coverings. For example, how about his name, Rey Mysterio? This translates to King Mystery in English, which is exactly why some of Rey's masks feature a crown above a question mark. Personal details like these is what makes the mask feel like more than just a mere hood ornament, but instead the true face of the persona. Which is just one of the reasons why the mask itself really is the gimmick. And if someone should lose the mask, it could mean losing the character forever. But how exactly would that happen? Well, Eddie Guerrero is on record as the first luchador to demask on his own, but usually a mask is lost through a luchas de apuestas, or a wager match. where a wrestler will put either their hair or their mask on the line. And if a wrestler does lose the match and has to reveal his face, it is considered a really big deal, and that persona is to never return ever again. Now, this is sometimes done in order to end a wrestler's career, or done as a way to shake things up, like with Rey Mysterio Jr., who lost his mask in a match to Kevin Nash, leaving the character behind and never, ever returning to it again. But wait a minute, are you wondering about Rey's WWE run? Well, there's a bit of a technicality there, and it's just another great feature of Lucha Libre and mask culture, and that's the fact that mantles can change, just like with superheroes. Allow me to explain. The wrestler currently known as Rey Mysterio started out as Rey Mysterio Jr., but during this time, Rey's uncle, the originator of the gimmick, was going by the name of simply Rey Mysterio. He debuted during the Días de los Reyes, or the Day of the Kings event in 1976, originally spelling it with an I, by the way. But once Jr. lost the mask and WCW folded and WWE signed him, Rey took on a new persona, or an old one that was just new to him, because the original Rey Mysterio officially passed down the mantle of Rey Mysterio onto his nephew, and thus the character of Rey Mysterio Jr. never returned again, but the wrestler instead became just plain Rey Mysterio. And as for the OG, well, he became known as Rey Mysterio Sr. and went into retirement. Also, eventually another younger Mysterio would join the fray with El Hijo de Rey Mysterio, or the son of King Mystery. Oh, and he's not actually the son of Rey Mysterio, he's Rey's cousin. It's not Dominic, in case you were wondering. Now, this whole passing down the character thing is not unique either. There have been many legacy masks throughout Lucha Libre, especially for prominent early luchadors like El Santo and Blue Demon. And now this is the second time that I've mentioned those two, and as popular as they were, there is still another. Because they are two out of the big three when it comes to Lucha Libre. And the third is the man of 1,000 masks, Mil Mascaras. Mil is often credited as popularizing masks for mainstream audiences outside of Mexico. He was even voted the most popular wrestler of the year in 1975 by PWI. He has also been said to have been highly influential to wrestlers in Japan, being one of the main inspirations for the likes of Ultimo Dragon, Jushin Thunder Liger, and the Great Suzuki, just to name a few. Mascaras also wrestled in the WWF and was inducted into their Hall of Fame in 2012. On top of all of that, he's also starred in 20 films and has appeared on a postage stamp. Now that's making it in the mainstream. Well, there you go, a brief overview of masked wrestling. But what do you think? What are some of your favorite masked wrestlers? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, Dave knows.